But the word says in Matthew 7, 3 through 5, "And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Let me remove the speck from your eye,' and look, a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." See, rather than asking the question, what am I doing to build this relationship up? Or what am I doing to tear this relationship down? We point out our significant others' faults. We dwell on their shortcomings. We check out their imperfections. We think on their weaknesses. And we never turn the question inward and say, what is my part? What have I done? Or what have I not done to make this relationship what it is today? So, I get it. I understand that in every relationship that there are two people. We just said that. Two people. And you may not even be half of the problem. When I look at different people's relationships, I tend to think that they're more 30-70. Sometimes there is a person who is the worst one of the group. You know, there may be somebody who is short-fused or short-tempered or, you know, doesn't know how to keep their cool or gets emotional or maybe is really touchy or whatever. I get it. I understand that maybe you aren't the whole problem, but you are certainly part of the problem. And the way that you respond to the other person's inadequacies completely sends the relationship in a certain direction. And so maybe you're sitting here thinking, well, you just don't know my fill in the blank. You don't know my husband. You don't know my boss. You don't know my spouse. You don't know my kids. You don't know my mother-in-law. You just don't know. I do know. I get it. I've watched relationships around me. I've seen the fact that there is usually one person who's a little more rotten than the other one, who's a little more wrong than the other one. But that does not nullify the fact that you have a part to play. And do you know that rotten people get rottener? If that's a word. Rotten people get rottener if you treat them rotten. You know, I once heard, I think it was Lisa Turkhurst say, you can speak to in every man, there's a prince and there's a beast. And the way you talk to them just reveals who you're going to get. I didn't plan to say that. There's a prince and there's a beast inside of every man. And the way you talk to them depends on who you're going to get. There is a part that you have to play, even if that other person in your relationship is more of the problem. But I don't want you to look at that this morning, because we're not going to be pointing the finger at that other person. We're going to be looking at ourselves this morning, because I truly believe that women set the tone for their households, women set the tone for their relationships, women set the tone for every entity that they walk into. And you can change the tone of your house. You can change the tone of your relationships by the way that you respond if you will begin to look inward at me. What kind of a wife are you? What kind of a friend are you? What kind of a mother are you? What kind of a daughter are you? So I'm going to make a profound statement this morning. It's simple, but it's true. And I want you to write it down, and then I want you to say it with me. Every good relationship starts with me. We're going to say it together on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Every good relationship starts with me. Every good relationship starts with you. Period. End of story. Every good relationship starts with you. Now, along that same vein, every bad relationship starts with you as well. So you got to take accountability here. Every good relationship starts with you, and every bad relationship starts with you as well. If you're a part of it, there's a potential for you to make it go either way. No matter how hard you try, you cannot change another person. The only person that you can change is you. No matter how hard you pray, no matter how hard you fight, no matter how much you try, you are not the Holy Spirit in anybody else's life. You cannot change them. You have got to rid yourself of trying to change the person you live with. They will only become bitter at you. Let them be free to be themselves. God made them. He made them for a purpose. Your opinion is not always right. It does not have to always be right, and you don't always have to do things your way. You do not have to be in control of somebody else's life. You cannot control somebody, and they will not change until they decide that they are ready to change, period. So rather than focusing on that other person, we're going to focus on becoming who God has created us to be, because that's the one thing you can change. You can change the way you respond to situations, and you can become so godly, and you can become so much like Jesus in situations that just love exudes from your heart. And when it does, then you will create an environment where change can take place. And that person will be so much more apt to be willing to change. And when that person decides they want to change, then the change will take place. This isn't about your husband. It's not about your best friend. It's not about your son. It's about you. And every good relationship starts with you. Okay? All right. Now, how do you model that love? And what does a good woman look like? We're going to be spending the next few minutes discussing this. But before we do, I want to say a few things. My kids are still young. My daughter's 10. The other two just had birthdays, so they're 9 and 6 as of yesterday. I teach them, and I have taught them from the time they were little tiny tots what to look for in a spouse. Because, you know, I love my mom. She's a great mom. I remember the advice that she gave me one time. She said, Amy, why don't you date Sean Blakeney? And I said, what do you mean, Mom? Date Sean Blakeney? And she said, well, he's such a nice guy. His dad's a pastor. He's handsome. He'd be a great guy to date. And I said, oh, Mom, Sean Blakeney is not the kind of guy you date. He's the kind of guy you marry. And she said to me, Amy, did it ever occur to you that one day you are going to marry one of those guys that you date? And I mean, it probably shouldn't have taken me by surprise, but as a 16-year-old girl, a light bulb went off in the inside of me, and I thought, you know, she's got a point. And honest to goodness, I never had a whole lot of teaching on relationships when I was a little girl. My mom never really told me much more than that, honestly. And, you know, I have my mom sitting back here, so I have to give her credit. She's done way better than her mother did. She's a fabulous mother. She's a wonderful mother. She's a great mom, but she didn't teach me a lot about relationships. So I had to kind of figure it out on my own, and the Holy Spirit ended up being my guide. And thank God I didn't make any horrible mistake before that wedding day came, and I kind of figured it out on my own. But I tell my kids 4 things. 4 things to look for a spouse. Number 1, that they're a Christian. And that they don't just say that they're a Christian, but they actually act like it. Because, you know, there is a difference. I dated a guy who said he was a Christian, but he didn't really act like it. But I thought it was okay, because, you know, you're not supposed to be unequally yoked. And, well, we weren't, because he was a Christian. And it didn't matter that he was doing all kinds of wrong things and I was doing them with him, but you get the point. They don't just say that they're a Christian, but that they act like it. Number 2, that they're teachable. Number 3, that they're kind to everyone. And number 4, that they are lighthearted and easily amused. So if these are things that you would look for in a spouse, I think it's important to note that these are some of the top qualities that you ought to be in a spouse, or as that second person in that relationship. So we're going to go through a little bit deeper, and we're going to get into these right now. Number 1, that she is a Christian and that she acts like it. That she doesn't just act like the devil and say she's a Christian. And all the rest of the topics that we're going to be talking about are going to really, if you fulfill that one, you've kind of met the whole rest of the law. So I'm not going to go into detail right now about it. We're going to go right on to number 2, which is that she is teachable. A woman who is a good woman, how do you model love? You are teachable. How can you create a healthy and enjoyable environment for your home where change can take place? Be teachable. And I want to share a story with you that happened just last week in my house. And I thought it was a fabulous example of what I'm talking about here. You see, we were getting ready to walk out the door for school in the morning, and my daughter had a Nutri-Grain bar, and she left the wrapper on the counter. So as we were getting ready to leave, I said, "Who left the Nutri-Grain wrapper on the counter?" And she said, "Oh, Mommy, that was me." And I said, "Well, you need to put it in the trash." And my husband went on to say, "Aspen, you have done a great job cleaning your room." She used to be a clutter bug, and in the last year she has made huge advances in keeping her room clean. It is spotless most of the time. But he said, "You've been doing a great job at keeping your room clean, and you are a great student, but you really need to learn how to pick up your clutter that's in the rest of the house. And if everybody left a Nutri-Grain wrapper on the table when they were done and didn't put it in the trash, then the whole house would be cluttered all the time." So we got in the car to go to school, and my husband went in his own car to go to work, and I could tell something was bothering Aspen. She had a look on her face that was really rather sour. And I said to her, "Aspen, what's the matter?" And she said, "Well, Daddy doesn't always put his stuff away either." Yeah, and she said it rather defensively. He's not perfect, is what she's saying. He makes mistakes too. And it's that, so I ask you the question, who had the problem here? Was it Landon's approach to telling her? Or was it Aspen's inability to receive what it is that he was saying that was the problem? I don't think that my husband could have said it much better. He went on first and he said, "You're really good at cleaning your room now, and you're a really good student. But an area that you could improve on is picking up your clutter in the house and throwing your trash away." I don't know how you could say it much better than that. Those are techniques that you use, build somebody up, tell them something positive. I mean, really, in this circumstance, did it really even require that? No, just throw your trash away and learn to pick your stuff up would have probably been sufficient. Yet her inability to receive the correction that he was giving her made for conflict in the house. Now, did Landon in any way, shape, or form mean to beat her down with those words? No. Was he trying to build her up? Yes. Was he teaching her to do better and to be better and to rise up? Absolutely. Why is it then that when somebody criticizes us, and it's not even criticism, but tries to help us, that we get defensive and we back off? You have got to have a teachable spirit if you want to have good relationships. Relationships are not without conflict. You cannot live in the same house with the same people for the rest of your life and expect to live in rosy, perfect land. It's not going to happen. Even the best relationships still have conflict. But it is your ability to receive the instruction or to receive the criticism, the constructive criticism, or any kind of criticism for that matter with a teachable spirit. Now, because I've had this conversation with my daughter over and over and over again, we just got another opportunity to rehearse how you could have a teachable spirit. And the first way that you can have a teachable spirit is by simply believing the best about that other person. My husband and I actually had one conflict a long time ago where I had a little baby. I was really, really young, and I had gone to work, and it was a really rainy day out, and it was like tropical depression rain. And so I told my boss that I needed to go home early in order for my husband to be able to go to work because he had like a 2.5-hour drive. And rain in a 2.5-hour drive up 95 or something, lots of accidents can happen. And, so he needed a little extra time. So without my husband asking me to, I went ahead and came home from work a little bit early. I asked him if he could, fill the prescriptions for the kids because one of my baby was sick. And so when I got home, he hadn't filled the prescription. And I was human and irritated as all get out because now it is raining buckets outside. It is pouring the rain down in buckets. And I'm having to take a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an infant to Publix to get this prescription in the pouring down rain. Not something that I look forward to. And I haven't had a chance to talk to him. So that evening, I just started getting madder. The more I thought about it, I thought, how inconsiderate was that of you? I cannot believe that you left me in this position. I was being so thoughtful, and I was being so considerate, and I came home from work early so that you could leave early and that you were sure to not be late, and you couldn't even fill the prescription for me. And I mean, the anger just grew as the night went on, and he got home late, and I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I woke up in the morning, and I said, let me tell you what. I could not believe